Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of The Missing Method for Guitar books. And in this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to start playing power chords today. But first, make sure you download the PDF that goes along with this lesson. That way you can follow along. So power chords are also known as rock chords, and they're chords that only consist of two notes. And so because of that, there's a lot of things you can do with them. You can play them in different ways all over the neck. For example, here's one version, or you could do a one-finger version like this. All sorts of things, stuff like this, even open versions. So there's a lot you can do with them. Not only that, you can add all kinds of effects. And the reason I mention that is, let's say you wanted to play a regular G chord. I'll do that. You can hear it sounds okay, but it's a little muddy. Now listen to just a G power chord. If you notice, there's more clarity there with the G5 power chord. So that's one of the reasons why power chords are so popular. Not only do they sound great, but they sound great with all sorts of effects. And what you're listening to now is simply called distortion. You may already know that, of course, but you can add all sorts of cool effects to power chords and they still sound good. I'm going to just reach down and grab the amp here and switch over to a random effect. I think we have chorus on here, just so you can hear a difference. You can kind of hear that wavy chorus that goes through there. So it gives the power chord a little bit different of a sound. So let me just switch this back here, and we're back to where we were on the settings. Okay, so not only can you add effects and things along those lines, they can be mixed into all sorts of different styles of music. Now usually they're used with rock and metal and things like that, but every once in a while you see them pop up in pop music, country, and other styles of music too. Okay, so let's go ahead and start learning how to play these power chords. Since they only consist of two notes, let's take a look at the easiest one to play. It's called E5. Now the reason it's called E is that is the core note of that power chord. And that E note that we're going to use is simply the last string open on the guitar. And the reason it's called E5 is that the other note in the chord is 5 notes away from E. So if we think of E as first, F, G, A, B. B is the second fret of the 5th string. So you play those two notes together, you have a pretty awesome sounding power chord. All right, so since that applies here, we can also use just that one finger approach to power chords and play a different one. We can take the A on the 5th string plus the E note, which is 5 notes away from A, on the 4th string, 2nd fret. And now we have an A5 power chord. And finally, we can do the same thing with the note D plus the note A on the 3rd string, 2nd fret. Play those together. And there we have a D5 power chord. So even with just those 3 chords, you could come up with, thousands of different types of songs. In fact, I'm just going to make one up here on the spot so you can kind of get an idea. So I'm going to start with the A5 just because. And there you go. And of course, there's so many different things I could have done. I was just giving you a quick example of how those 3 chords sound great together. All right, so those chords are called open power chords because there's a string that is left open on each one of them. But most power chords have 2 fingers pressed down at all times. And so that way you get the root or the core note of the chord plus that note 5 notes away. And since it follows that specific formula, that chord looks the same all over the neck. So let's go to the last string, and since this is the 6th string, we call it a root 6 power chord. So we're just going to put our first finger on the 1st fret of the 6th string, and then our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. So what we have here is the root on the last string, which is the note F. 5 notes away from that is C. Play together. And now you have the basic shape you'll need for most other power chords. So let's say we wanted to move that up to the 4th fret. So we know that note on the 4th fret is A flat, or G sharp if you want to call it that. And then up here, 5 notes away, is the E flat. So we have an A flat power chord at the 4th fret. Then if you keep going up the neck, you'll find all the other power chords you need. So let's say we go back one to the 3rd fret, G. There's the G5. 5th fret is A5. Move it up to the 7th fret, that's B5. Move it up to the 8th fret, that's a C5. 10th fret, D, and then at the 12th fret is again an E5. In fact, you can hear it's an octave away from that open one we originally did. And there you go. So that's how power chords work. It's those same 2 fingers, same distance apart on 2 different strings, the whole way up or down the neck. But then, of course, since we did that on the last 2 strings, we can also do that on the next 2 strings. And these power chords are known as root 5 power chords because the main sound is found on that 5th string. So let's say we do the same kind of thing. We put our first finger at the 1st fret of string number 5, and then our 3rd finger 2 frets higher on the next string, string 4, works just like the last 2 strings. So because of that, my first finger was on B flat or A sharp, so I have a B flat 5 power chord. And then that works the same way. We would go to B at the 2nd fret, C at the 3rd, D at the 5th, E at the 7th, F at the 8th, and then G at the 10th. So you end up with different versions of the same chord. For example, we had an A5 power chord open, which was one of the first examples we looked at. But on the last string, you also have an A5. And you can hear it's the same thing. Now the size of the strings and the fact that one is open and one is not does make a difference in the sound, but the pitches remain the same. It's still an A and an E, and in the same octave. But let's say you have a G5 on the last string, 3rd fret, and then of course your other finger just kind of tags along here. If you come up to the 10th fret on the 5th string, you also have a G5, but this time it's an octave away, so it gives you more variety and more possibilities of power chords that you can play. Since that works on both strings 5 and 6, it also works on string 4, where you have 2 strings together here. Same idea. We have D5 open, E5 at the 2nd fret with the 1st finger, F5 at the 3rd fret, G5, A5, B5, C5, and then of course the octave at D5 on that 4th string. So with all the variety you have, you might ask, well, how do I know which one to go to? If on paper you see an F5 followed by a G5, does that mean you do F5 here and G5 up here? Well, it depends partially on the song, because some songs might jump that much, but most of the time you simply want to find the nearest version of that chord. So if you're going from F to G, might as well just go with 1 to 3. And then if you want to go from, let's say, G to C, now you could stay on one string and do that. So we know the G5 is on the 3rd fret of the last string. Then come up to the 8th fret for the C5 on the last string. That works well. Or you could go to the G5, same spot on the last string, and then just simply cross over to the root 5 for C5. And you get the same thing. So the version you pick really depends on the sound you're looking for or how quickly you have to change. Because if you have to change fast, chances are you're going to want something that's really close by. All right, so there's one more thing that we can do to these power chords to make them sound even bigger and fuller, and that is to add another finger, another note to the chord. So even though the power chord is really just 2 notes, even with this extra finger, it remains 2 notes. Just one of those notes is doubled. So let's take a look at that F5 power chord again. We have F, 1st fret on the last string. Then we have the C, 5th string, 3rd fret. And then right behind that C with the pinky, 4th string, 3rd fret, we have another F. So F, C, F is how that would look. And you can hear with 3 fingers, it now sounds more filled out. And so the version of the power chord you choose to play, again, depends on what the song needs, or if it's a song that's already been written, just listen to it. Does it sound big and full, or does it have a smaller 2-finger kind of sound? And you'll be able to notice it after a while pretty quickly. And one thing I want to mention is that when you're using power chords that are root 6 and root 5, you can do it just like this, where you have finger and then both the next 2 are on the next 2 strings. However, when you're doing a 3-note power chord on a root 4, you have to make an adjustment because of the tuning of the guitar. So let's say we're going to do an E5. So we have our 2nd fret covered with the 1st finger on the 4th string, the 4th fret covered with the 3rd finger on the 3rd string. Then on the 2nd string, we have to reach up to the 5th fret with the pinky to get the next E. So it sounds like this. If we didn't do that, we would have this. Still a cool sound, but it's not a true power chord anymore. So do keep that in mind when you're practicing these power chords, that you need to move that pinky up if you're on a root 4 power chord. So now that you know how to play these power chords, I'd recommend taking that PDF and just start learning where all these different notes are so that you can play power chords all over the neck. Now, those aren't the only types of power chords. We just talked about the most common ones that you'll come across. Now, they are all 2 notes, of course. But you have inverted power chords, drop D power chords, other open power chords that we didn't address. So if you're interested in learning even more about power chords, definitely check out the book, Guitar Chord Master Level 3 Power Chords. In it, you'll get an opportunity to practice all the power chords that I showed you here today, plus you'll learn the inverted power chords, the drop D power chords, and all that other stuff, as well as some classic rock rhythms that you'll want to know. So I hope you enjoyed this video, that you now understand how to use power chords and are eager to practice. You can practice these with thousands and thousands of songs. There's tons of stuff out there that you can do. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like it. And then also too, don't forget to sign up for our mailing list. If you do that, you'll find out about new videos coming out every month, new books coming out, or whatever the Missing Method's been up to. So I'll see you in the next video.